Have you ever wondered what's really lurking in the shadows of our stories? Beyond the campfire tales and the movie monsters, there is this whole secret world of mythical beings. And their lives, well, they have a lot more to tell us about ourselves than you might think.
So that's the big question, right? Why do we invent creatures that absolutely terrify us? For thousands of years, we've been filling in the blank spots on the map with fantasy and fear. But it's not just for the thrill. Oh no, there's something much, much deeper going on.
And this really hits the nail on the head. See, myths aren't just simple stories. They're more like tools. They were the instruction manuals for ancient cultures, a way to make sense of a world that felt chaotic, a way to enforce social rules, and a way to face their absolute deepest anxieties. So here's our game plan for today. First up, we're going to dig into why we tell these stories in the first place. Then we'll take a lightning-fast tour of mythical beings from all over the globe. After that, we're opening two big case files, one on the chilling Wendigo and another on the always-changing vampire. And to wrap it all up, we'll uncover what these monsters truly reveal about us. Okay, so the thing you've got to understand is that these stories are basically mirrors. A myth about some terrifying sea monster, well, that might be a way to understand and, more importantly, respect the very real dangers of the ocean. A story about a tricky little forest spirit might just be a lesson to always be cautious. Every single monster is a reflection of a very human fear, a social value, or a cultural question.
All right, let's take a quick trip around the world because almost every culture has its own unique cast of mythical beings. Some of them guide heroes, others trick unsuspecting travelers, and some are just plain dire warnings. And believe me, the sheer variety is absolutely mind-blowing.
For example, in Cameroon, you might hear tales of the Jengu. And these aren't monsters at all, far from it. They're beautiful, mermaid-like water spirits who are believed to have healing powers. They can bring good fortune to anyone who respects the rivers. It's a great reminder that these beings aren't always about fear. Hopping over to Japan, we find the kappa, a type of supernatural spirit they call a yokai. Picture this, a creature that looks like a turtle, is about the size of a kid, and has a bowl on its head that's filled with water. They're famous for loving cucumbers, but they can also be incredibly dangerous. A perfect example of a creature that's part mischief, part total menace. And then in Ireland, the puka roams. This is a seriously powerful shapeshifter. One minute it might appear as a sleek black horse offering a wild ride to a tired traveler. The next, it's a goat spoiling the harvest. You never really know its motives, which makes it the perfect symbol of the unpredictable and sometimes dangerous nature of the wild. And check this out. In the Dominican Republic, there's the Siguapa. These are wild women who live in the mountains, and here's the twist. Their feet are turned backwards. So if you ever try to follow their tracks, you'll just get led further and further astray. Talk about a perfect symbol for the untamable spirit of nature. All right, time to open our first case file. For this one, we're heading deep into the cold northern forests of Algonquian folklore to investigate a truly terrifying creature, the Wendigo. And this isn't just some monster. It's a powerful, powerful cultural symbol. So at its core, the Wendigo is an evil spirit. It is the literal embodiment of cannibalism and a hunger that can never be satisfied. It represents the absolute worst of human impulses, that out-of-control greed and consumption that is just never, ever enough. I mean, listen to that description from the Ojibwe scholar Basil Johnston. It's just chilling. It paints this picture not of some powerful beast, but of a walking skeleton, something that's been completely hollowed out by its own endless hunger. The fact that it's both starving and gluttonous at the same time, that's a terrifying thing. But here's the thing. You aren't born a Wendigo. You become one. It's a transformation, and it all starts with a human choice. Whether it's driven by pure greed or the absolute desperation of a starving winter, a person breaks the ultimate taboo, cannibalism. And that single act kicks the door wide open for the evil spirit to take over, turning them into a monster. So you see, the Wendigo is so much more than a scary story for a cold night. It's a powerful cultural lesson. It's a warning against the kind of selfish greed that can tear a community apart, or even lead to the destruction of the natural world. It's a timeless metaphor for consumption without a single thought for the consequences. Okay, on to our next case file, and this one features a creature you probably know pretty well, the vampire.
But the vampire you're picturing right now is probably very different from its ancestors. This is a monster that has masterfully adapted, changing its face to reflect the anxieties of every new generation.
I mean, just look at this evolution. The vampire started out in old folklore as this bloated corpse climbing out of its grave, basically a simple scapegoat for diseases nobody could explain. Then, fast forward to the 19th century, it puts on a cape, moves into a spooky castle, and suddenly becomes a symbol of aristocratic decay and forbidden desires. And today? Well, today it's often a tortured romantic hero. What a journey.
The transformation is just so stark when you put them side by side. The original folklore vampire was crude, terrifying, a physical manifestation of a village's fears about plagues and sin. But the Gothic vampire, it became sophisticated. It was a mirror held up to the anxieties of the upper class, reflecting their own hidden, monstrous desires for wealth and sexual power. And Bram Stoker's Dracula is the absolute peak of this. Count Dracula isn't just a monster. He is everything the Victorian middle class was terrified of. He represents a fear of foreign influence. They called it reverse colonization, as he comes from the primitive East to corrupt modern London. He embodies repressed sexuality and that animal nature that the super-civilized Victorians were trying so hard to deny they had. So after digging into the Wendigo's warning against greed and watching the vampire's constantly changing face of fear, what have we actually learned? It really brings us all the way back to our first question. Why do we tell these stories? This quote really gets to the heart of it. These creatures, and especially vampires, they fascinate us because they exist in this weird space between worlds. Undead, yet alive. Human, yet monstrous. And it's in that duality, that gray area, that we see ourselves. They become a safe way for us to explore the darker, more complicated parts of our own nature. Ultimately, this is the big secret. Every monster, every ghost, every mythical being is a carefully constructed container for our own anxieties, our rules, and our warnings. We don't create them to understand the unknown out there. We create them to understand ourselves, right here. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. What are our monsters today? Are they the shambling hordes of zombies, representing our fear of pandemics, or losing our individuality? Or maybe it's rogue AI, reflecting our anxiety about technology getting away from us. The stories we tell about them are really the stories we're telling about ourselves, right now.